Calling Spygate, and Republicans demand answers about government informants allegedly targeting the Trump campaign. Welcome to a brand new hour of America's Newsroom. I'm Sandra Smith. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning to you, my dear.
Back together again.
Nice to see you and great to be with you.
Too.
I'm Bill Hemmer. Good morning. Serious questions about secret surveillance of the Trump team by the FBI during the final years of the Obama administration. Justice Department now planning to show key Republicans classified material about the Russian matter after a meeting between the president, his Deputy Attorney General, and the head of the FBI. White House Deputy Press Secretary Hogan Gidley last hour said this about that here live in America's Newsroom.
In the second year of this investigation, this phony investigation, there has been no Russian collusion, no obstruction, no corruption. Now we find out from reports that apparently someone was sent to infiltrate and spy inside the Trump campaign back to the FBI. Anybody should be deeply concerned about this. You even saw Mr. Clapper make a comment yesterday on TV saying the president should be happy about the fact that someone was in his campaign doing this. The president said absolutely not happy. The American people need to understand this president was furious about that because it's incorrect, illegal treatment of this president, and he would stand up and protect his campaign, but also the American people against this behavior.
All right, full coverage in a moment here. Former Deputy Campaign Manager David Bossie is up in a second, but first, Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge is live for us in D.C. Let's start there, Catherine. Good morning.
Well, thank you, Bill, and good morning. That White House brokered meeting about records that relate to the alleged informant is very fluid at this hour, with the latest information indicating it will now be Thursday at the Department of Justice with the Republican chairman of the House and Intelligence Committees, Trey Gowdy, Devin Nunes, FBI Director Christopher Wray, the nation's intelligence chief Dan Coats, and a senior aide to Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General. A source close to the discussion said it's not clear the records requested by Congress, including those about an alleged FBI informant, will be accessible, and we understand this morning there may be some movement on Rosenstein's plans. In the meantime, Fox is learning more about the suspected informant's contacts during the 2016 election. Sources tell Fox News the suspected informant met with campaign aides Carter Page and Sam Clovis, and at one point was recommended for an administration position. The individual was known to former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort from the 70s, but we're told there was no contact between the men during the presidential campaign, Bill.
Well, okay, Catherine, you know where special counsels go. They can go to places that are unpredictable. So the question then, why are Republicans now calling for a second special counsel, Catherine?
Okay, pardon to interrupt you there, Bill. Last night on Fox, we heard from some of the sponsors of this House resolution, and they explained why they really believe there's a need for another investigation.
The Department of Justice says, don't worry, we can investigate ourselves. Even though, as you say, they took a dossier to a secret court to get a secret warrant, didn't tell the court who paid for it, namely the Clinton campaign, didn't tell the court that the author of the document, Christopher Steele, had been fired by the FBI. They say, don't worry, we can investigate ourselves, even though it now appears there were paid informants.
On the other side of the story, Democrats accuse those Republicans of improperly investigating the investigators.
Normally, when you have Congress trying to interfere with an investigation, the president protects the independence of the Justice Department. But here the president is part of that interference, and there is no one left to defend the department. So that leaves them in a very weakened position and really puts the rule of law at risk.
One Republican pointed to Thursday's White House brokered meeting over these records about the alleged informant, saying that if none are provided, it really underscored their position that there is a need for a second special counsel bill.
Catherine, thank you for all that.
You're
Catherine
welcome.
Herridge in Washington.
And Obama administration officials have been coming out with their reaction to this news this morning. David Bossie's the former deputy campaign manager for the Trump campaign and a Fox News contributor. He joins us now. David, good morning.
Good morning.
So this is coming in moments ago from James Comey's verified Twitter account. He writes this: facts matter. The FBI's use of confidential human sources, the actual term, is tightly regulated and essential to protecting the country. Attacks on the FBI and lying about its work will do lasting damage to our country. How will Republicans explain this to their grandchildren, he asks.
Okay. James Comey's going to have to explain to his grandchildren what he allowed the FBI to do and how they and look, there's an enormous discussion to be had here, and it is deeply disturbing and now we understand as a fact that they had spies inside this campaign. It is outrageous. Every American should be disturbed by this news. It is something that we have never heard of before, let alone the thought of.
Clearly, the president feels the same, referring to it as Spygate this morning, saying it could be the biggest political scandal in history.
Well, it is, and you have Democrats who hate this president more than they love this country. So you have this guy, Schiff, who is unbelievably irresponsible in the words that he uses. He has never met a microphone he doesn't want to talk into. It's what he does every day is wake up to attack this president, and he doesn't care about the facts or the rule of law, and he stands up there in this high and mighty position that is irresponsible and dangerous. And we need to get the documents and not a conversation tomorrow about documents. These people, the people going to this meeting, whether it's Nunez, Gowdy, and these others, Dan Coates, need to see the documents, the underlying information, because if there was paid informants, paid spies in this campaign, the Congress, in an oversight capacity, must get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, we'll see what Adam Schiff does. There's been some suggestion he's going to get Democrats together because, as you heard Hogan Gidley last hour from the White House, no Democrats were invited. And Sarah Sanders pointed this out at the meeting yesterday at the briefing. She said, why would they be invited? They didn't ask any questions about it.
First of all, why would they be invited? They don't care about the facts. The Democrats, only care about a partisan political witch hunt that they are trying to ride to the November midterms. That's all this is about to them. The politics of it has nothing to do with facts and evidence. It has everything to do with the process, the politics of it.
Well, clearly we've been hearing Democrats, some of them upset that they weren't invited. One of them was Chuck Schumer, and he had this to say. Listen to this. I'll get your reaction.
It would be inappropriate for the White House to inquire of any ongoing investigation and put pressure to direct its outcome. It's unprecedented, it's outrageous, and it has overtones of things that would be done in a banana republic, where the dictator just pushes what he wants done.
Bossy.
God, these guys. It never stops. Look, congressional oversight of the Department of Justice and what they did, what the Department of Justice and the FBI did, whether it's paying spies or informants within the campaign. Congressional oversight is inappropriate. Not only appropriate, it is required by our Constitution. It is what the Founding Fathers thought of about the process between the equal but separate branches of government, that Congress can oversee the executive, and that's what this is. The president is saying, hey, the Department of Justice and FBI may have done things that are wrong here. Congress must oversee it. That's what the president has done. Chuck Schumer, once again, is trying to use scare tactics and scaremongering and without any evidence or facts. That's all these Democrats do. That's all they've done. They've lost credibility on this investigation. There clearly has been no collusion. Nearly 2 years this investigation has been going on. 2 years. Mueller's been there over 1 year now. But this investigation began in the summer of 2016. Not one scintilla of evidence has come forward to show any collusion, cooperation. It is beyond argument now that now they've gone into and lurched into these other areas out of desperation.
Well, we'll see where all this goes. The president's been extremely vocal as far as tweeting about this morning, and then, of course, this meeting taking place with congressional Republicans at the White House tomorrow. David Bossy, thanks. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Meanwhile, less than 2 hours from now, President Trump is here in New York to put the focus on gang violence. Long Island, New York is an area struggling in the fight against the violent MS-13. The roundtable coming after the White House doubled down on the president's characterization of the MS-13 gang members as animals. Brian Yennis live in Bethpage, New York. And what can we expect from today's meeting there, Brian? Good morning.
Good morning, Bill. Well, look, security is set behind me for the president's MS-13 roundtable scheduled today for 2 p.m. here on Long Island. It will feature 14 people, victims' family members, Republican congressmen, and local police commissioners. The president is going to get an update as to how the fight against this gang is going and what more is needed to win. This is the second time the president has visited Long Island in less than a year to discuss MS-13. Now, Long Island is an MS-13 hotspot. The FBI says 10,000 members are in the U.S., 2,000 live here, but the gang's reach extends across 40 states. Under President Trump, arrests of MS-13 gang members are way up. In fact, last year, ICE arrested 796 MS-13 members. That's the highest number in 9 years. We spoke to the Suffolk County Sheriff yesterday. Thanks to the renewed fight against MS-13, the county hasn't seen an MS-13 murder in 13 months, but the sheriff says more money is needed.
If I can get funding for my GRADE program, my gang resistance education and training, so that we can continue to go into the middle schools where we're thwarting gang recruitment and also gang awareness to these middle school students.
He also says, Bill, better technology and analytics is needed to gather intelligence on this gang.
Wow.
Bill?
Just yesterday, an MS-13 gang member in Massachusetts was sentenced to prison, Brian.
Yeah, 23-year-old Joel Martinez, nicknamed Animal, sentenced to 40 years in prison for stabbing and killing a 15-year-old boy in 2015. He did it in order to get initiated into the gang. Expect the president today to continue to use the term animals in describing MS-13 gang members, despite recent objections and criticism that from activists and Democrats who say using that term is racist and it dehumanizes all immigrants. Bill.
Thank you, Brian. Brian Yennis, that event begins again in about 2 hours. Sandra.
Top Republican lawmakers saying it is time to take a closer look at the highest levels of the Justice Department and the FBI.
While many in the media and American public have been trying to bring down the president without evidence that President Trump colluded with Russia to win the election, there is a ton of actual evidence of real misconduct that those same people have been attempting to completely sweep under the rug.
A group of Republicans now calling for a second special counsel as the Senate Homeland Security Committee pushes for more information from the FBI. Chairman Ron Johnson joining us next with more about what the committee wants to know. Plus this.
It is my view that we have made zero concessions to Chairman Kim to date, and we have no intention of doing so.
That word from Mike Pompeo moments ago, testifying on the Hill, on Capitol Hill right now, making a lot of news on North Korea, Russia, Venezuela, and more. A live report on what he has to say today, coming up here.
Plus, President Trump telling supporters last night that the Right to Life movement is a key to winning in November. Our panel takes this one up.
I have kept my promise, and I think everybody here understands that fully. One of my very first acts as president was to reinstate the Mexico City policy to prevent taxpayer dollars from funding abortion centers overseas.
Even today, we continue to see leaks come out of the Department of Justice and FBI spinning a narrative that, quite frankly, is not supported by the facts. So it's time that we get to the facts. It's time that we appoint a second special counsel.
Some House Republicans renewing their push for an investigation into the DOJ and FBI's handling of the Trump campaign probe. As the Senate Homeland Security Committee chairman requesting information from FBI Director Christopher Wray about a reported briefing with President-elect Trump on that Steele dossier. That briefing reportedly coming at the request of former National Intelligence Director James Clapper. The committee chairman, Senator Ron Johnson, joining me now. Senator, what do we need to know about that?
Morning, Sandra. Well, there's so much we need to know. Let me just, I've been describing what's going on here as a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle. Special Counsel Mueller has a few hundred pieces. The Inspector General might have a couple hundred. The news media have more pieces of this puzzle than Congress has. And so Congress is the representative of the American people, and the public has a right to know exactly what was happening in the Justice Department and the FBI under President Obama, and we simply don't. So what a number of us committee chairmen and committee members are trying to do is just get the basic information, primarily to restore the credibility of the FBI and the Department of Justice, which need to be beyond reproach in the eyes of the American public.
What specific questions do you have, Mr. Chairman?
Well, so on this particular letter, I'm finding out, I want to know who is part of the Sensitive Matters team. You know, exactly why did CNN know about the Steele dossier? Who leaked that to them? Exactly what did James Clapper, what was his involvement in trying to set up this meeting between James Comey and President-elect Trump so he could use that as a hook for the disclosure on CNN of the Steele dossier? Again, there's so much smoke here, there's so much suspicion. We need to get to the bottom of this, and Congress is the last body that's getting the information that the American public needs to know, and we're the body that will reveal it to the American public, because the special counsel keeps everything secret. The Inspector General doesn't have access to some of the witnesses, and he only issues a report, doesn't reveal all the information. It's Congress that actually provides the oversight the American people find out what they have a right to know.
Do you think you're going to get anywhere with this?
I'm relentless. I've been undertaking investigation under the Clinton-Hillary email scandal for about 3 years. I'm not going to be deterred by any kind of being pilloried in the press for trying to get to the truth so the American people know.
Second special counsel, is it needed?
That's where I disagree with the House members. The special counsels, once you have that investigation, it makes it that much more difficult for Congress to get information. They'll say, oh, there's an investigation. We can't reveal our sources right now. So I think the first step is get the information in front of Congress so we can get it out to the American public. Based on what we find, then potentially either an investigation by the Justice Department or potentially a special counsel. But again, we just had this completely out of order.
I got to ask you about this congressional approval now, Senator, that gives patients a right to try experimental drugs. This bill would allow patients with serious illnesses to try unproven experimental treatments. This is a big development.
Well, first of all, it's a big win for terminally ill patients and their families. It restored a little bit of freedom, a little bit of hopes, because it allows them to have access. They make the decision whether they want to take a drug that hasn't gone through all of FDA's approval. It's already been shown, it's gone through phase 1, the safety approval process, just hasn't been shown to be effective. But these are patients who have no other treatment options, don't qualify for a clinical trial. They have no hope. This restores a little freedom, a little hope. Big win for those patients, but also a big win for President Trump, Vice President Pence. The president, vice president were just stalwart, publicly and privately, pushing this, and it was without their help, this would not have become law, or certainly pass the House and hopefully become law when President Trump signs it, maybe as early as next week.
Do you expect a lot of pushback from the drug companies?
No, we worked with the pharmaceutical industry to make sure that we addressed their concerns. I think we did. This is really just about freedom to those terminally ill patients and their families. It's about restoring hope. I don't see how anybody could possibly oppose this.
Finally, Senator, before I let you go, obviously the big talk is about this North Korean summit. Do you see this actually taking place? We seem to hear a bit of a change coming out of the White House yesterday in the president's language.
Well, I'm hoping what doesn't change is that this administration has to maintain that maximum pressure campaign until we have that complete, verifiable, irreversible dismantlement. And this is why I've said the top priority of our relationship with China must be to get their cooperation to maintain those sanctions. The only way we achieve that goal of dismantlement is with that maximum pressure campaign in place until it's actually dismantled. We have to learn from the blunder with Iran where we release that pressure, Senator, and we end up getting a bad deal.
I kept going right up to the hard break here. I thank you for your time this morning.
Have a good day.
We'll see you again soon. Senator Ron Johnson. We'll be right back. All right, some dramatic video showing a young fox getting a lesson in nature's food chain. Take a look at this. A fox managed to catch a rabbit at a park in Washington State just before, wait for it, that bald eagle swooped in, snatching both the animals and pulling them up into the sky. The fox and the eagle then wrestled over their prey for several seconds before the fox fell back to the ground. The photographers who captured the encounter say the fox was just fine after the whole ordeal, but amazing pictures there.
Lunch was not served in the end after all. I take it. Yes.
Delish.
Yeah, maybe another day. Right on. Fox News Alert, here we go. This lava cam, crews scrambling to protect a major power plant on the Big Island. Jeff Paul's live on the scene. He's been there for a while now. How close is that lava, Jeff, getting to that plant?
Yeah, Bill, it's about 300 yards away from that geothermal power plant. There's some concern from locals that if that were to happen, there could be some explosions or releases of toxic steam. That power plant basically harnesses energy from the volcano and stores steam and hot liquid. Crews have already removed thousands of gallons of flammable liquid from that power plant. They've started to quench the wells or fill them up with cold water. Now, the governor spoke about this late last night. He says that he believes the risk has been mitigated. He feels crews have been working for about 24 hours, for the last 24 hours, to make the area more safe. And he believes that this community right now is in a good spot. Bill?
Jeff, overall, has the volcano progressed from when you first arrived there? I mean, you've been there more than a week, right?
Yeah, we've been here for more than a week. It's been going on for more than 2 weeks. And when we first got here, I think a lot of the attention was on the big one, this big dramatic eruption from the top of the summit. Most of the problems, though, that we are now seeing are in the lower rift zone and with these fissures. It's a ground opening where lava is spewing out. It has become such a problem down here that many of these fissures, these streams of lava, are now going so fast and so wide, they're becoming one big stream and creating a lava pool. The Hawaii National Guard recently flew over it. One guardsman told me that it totally changed his perspective after he saw it from the air.
It actually looked like a film scene out of Mordor, Lord of the Rings. There was just lava everywhere, huge pools and rivers, and the vents, I couldn't tell which vent was which. They were all going off, and it was a spectacular sight that I'll never forget.
Pretty incredible images that we're seeing. The other concern that is ongoing, air quality. There are 2 streams that are still going into the ocean. And when that happens, it makes this combination called LAZE, or lava haze. It's a steam that is packed with tiny little particles of glass and toxic acid. So there's definitely still some concerns out here, but not in regards to that geothermal plant just yet, Bill.
Got it, Santa. Thank you, Jeff Paul, out there on the Big Island today. Thank you, Jeff. We'll talk real soon. Thanks.
GOP lawmakers and Justice Department officials at odds over reports an FBI informant spied on the Trump campaign. The tension at a fever pitch as Republicans and DOJ leaders face off over classified documents. We're breaking down the fiery debate.
When the former director of national intelligence tells you he doesn't like to use the word spying, you have to ask yourself.
That is funny. I didn't think of it until you just mentioned that.
He was the director of national intelligence. What do you think he was in charge of doing? He was in charge of spying.
10:32 Fox News Alert. Now, there are several Republicans wanting this investigation and reports that an FBI informant spied on the Trump team in 2016. Tomorrow, they have a chance to hash it out with top officials. They have Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, FBI Director Christopher Wray. They will be at the White House with leading Republicans from Congress and the president. Thomas Dupree, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General to President George W. Bush. A lot of names in there. Tom, how you doing?
Great, Bill.
Good morning to you. What do you expect at that meeting, first off? Is that going to get us somewhere?
Yeah, I think here's what's going to happen. I suspect DOJ is going to have some evidence to share with the Republicans from the Hill and basically say, here's what we're willing to show you. The big question here is whether it is going to be enough. Devin Nunes and others on the Hill have demanded essentially the open kimono. They want to see everything DOJ has as far as the informant goes. DOJ, as it typically is very protective of sharing the company's secrets. And so I suspect tomorrow's meeting may assuage some concerns of those on the Hill. But the big question in my mind is whether they are going to successfully give them everything that the folks in Congress are demanding.
So we should read between the lines on their comments after this meeting's over. I think that's probably a smart suggestion.
Absolutely. Yeah. And look, I mean, I understand the tension here, and I'm sorry that kind of the relationship between Congress and the White House and DOJ has deteriorated to this point where you essentially almost have a meeting of, opposing parties or competing factions. I'm glad they're sitting down, but as I said, I'm a little doubtful that they're going to be able to give Congress everything it's been asking for.
On that topic, James Comey sent out a tweet a moment ago. Here it is on screen. He writes, dangerous time in our country is led by those who will lie about anything, backed by those who will believe anything, based on information from media sources that will say anything. Americans must break out of that bubble and seek truth. What do you make of that?
Boy, it's the sort of thing where he's turning up the rhetorical heat. But I got to tell you, Bill, my sense is that Comey has really put himself in a difficult position, given the book tour and his constant criticisms of the administration. I mean, I think there is a growing component of the American public that is increasingly seeing him as kind of offering these holier-than-thou platitudes. And I'm not sure that tweet really helps.
Okay. James Clapper, tell me if you think this helps. This is a soundbite from The View just yesterday. Listen here, Tom.
Was the FBI spying on Trump's campaign?
No, they were not. They were spying on a term I don't particularly like, but on what the Russians were doing, trying to understand, were the Russians infiltrating, trying to gain access, trying to gain leverage and influence.
So why doesn't he like
what they do?
So why doesn't he like that? He should be happy that
well, he should be.
Well, they were spying, a term I don't particularly like to use. How did you hear that comment, Tom?
Yeah, the way I heard it is I think what Clapper is trying to say is that, look, this investigation or the spying had absolutely nothing to do, or it was coincidental that it involved the Trump campaign, that it was focused on Russia. It's a fine line, and I suspect in the coming months we are going to learn as to whether this was a legitimate investigatory law enforcement technique or whether it crossed the line and that it may have been produced, at least in part, by partisan motives. I know that's Clapper's perspective. Maybe the evidence will bear that out, but we're going to see.
Well, do you think the FBI should have told the Trump campaign about individuals they were watching?
That is a tough question. Based on what I know right now, I think it is okay for the FBI not to have told the Trump campaign. In other words, if they were worried that someone in the campaign they told about this investigation might somehow leak it to people who were under investigation,
So from my perspective, based on what we know now, I think it was okay for them not to notify the campaign, but I am very interested into what the evidence was that prompted them to launch this investigation.
You're exactly
in the
right.
first place.
And let's see over time if you hold to that same opinion, okay, Tom? Here's the tweet from the president. Look how things have turned around on the criminal deep state. They go after phony collusion with Russia, made up scam, and end up getting caught in a major spy scandal, the likes of which this country may have never seen before. What goes around comes around. So you have that, and you have Rudy Giuliani saying, you know, if we do an interview in July, Bob Mueller could have this wrapped up by the 1st of September. Is that possible? Is that wishful thinking? What is your hunch as to what Giuliani is doing in his conversations with Mueller's team behind closed doors?
I think what Giuliani is doing is he is trying to put down a public marker to condition the American public to anticipate that Mueller is going to have this thing wrapped up by the fall. I'd imagine there has to be some basis in truth for this. I would be very surprised if Rudy Giuliani came out and just made flatly false assertions about what Mueller was telling him. So I suspect that there is some truth to what Rudy is saying. However, I think the big question here, Bill, is whether the president is going to sit for an interview with Mueller. Because if he does not, if he fights off Mueller, forces Mueller to subpoena him, I can't see how this possibly could be wrapped up by Labor Day.
Today, does he talk or not with him? Yes or no?
In my view, yes. I think he is ultimately going to sit down. I think it's going to be a structured meeting. I think there are going to be sharp parameters set on the meeting, both as far as the time as well as the subject matter. But at the end of the day, I think it's in Mueller's best interest and the White House's best interest to make this happen, get it done with, and enable Mueller to wrap this thing up soon.
We'll see if you're right. Good stuff. Tom, thank you. Tom Dupree in Washington. Thanks.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo testifying right now on Capitol Hill before the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Pompeo making some news on Russia, China, and North Korea. Rich Edson's live at the State Department for us. Rich, what did Pompeo have to say about Russian interference with the upcoming midterm elections?
Yeah, good morning, Sandra. And, you know, this is a hearing that's supposed to be focused on the budget. But, of course, anytime a Secretary of State's on Capitol Hill, they walk around the world talking a lot about Russia. To start here, the Secretary says that the Trump administration has done an awful lot to confront Russia, but says it has an awful lot of more work to do.
Light years better than was done in the previous administration. I could go on for a long time speaking about them. I'm happy to enumerate them if you'd like to do so. But I have to say, there's more work to do. We have not been able to achieve deterrence.
This is really a discussion around international politics and what's going on with U.S. diplomacy around the world. On China, the secretary says that there's a medical team now headed to Guangzhou. That's because of an illness or an attack on, perhaps, on some American employee there that looks an awful lot like what happened to about 24 American diplomats in Cuba. Staying in the hemisphere, on Venezuela, Pompeo says that Venezuela has just informed the United States that it's kicking out 2 top diplomats. The U.S. has sanctioned Venezuela there. Nicolas Maduro is the president. He's just won re-election. The United States has called that election a sham. And, of course, Pompeo is setting up this summit between President Trump and Kim Jong-un. He said in his last visit to North Korea, Kim Jong-un said he candidly told him that he understands that economic growth in North Korea is very much dependent on North Korea and a strategic shift. In other words, getting rid of its nuclear weapons, Sandra.
And meanwhile, Rich, some fireworks a few moments ago over former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton.
That's right. Congressman Gregory Meeks of New York, he's a Democrat, and he took exception to when Congressman Mike Pompeo, when he was congressman before becoming CIA director and Secretary of State, questioned Hillary Clinton over Benghazi.
Should we conclude, based upon that fact, that you do not care about diplomatic security, Mr. Secretary?
Agree with you. The briefing I received as a nominee was from the head of diplomatic security.
Mr. Secretary, claiming my time, Mr. Secretary, I happen to agree with you.
Was from the head of diplomatic. You should know that I'm diligently working on.
I happen to agree with you, Mr. Secretary.
I take diplomatic security very serious. Never make an accusation.
So this is a budget hearing, and Secretary Pompeo says you cannot measure the effectiveness of diplomatic security in dollars, something that Democrats have been questioning him and disagreeing with him on in certain respects. Sandra?
Rich Hudson, thank you.
It is 10:40 here in New York. We had some breaking news on this military plane. A crash in the state of Mississippi. Air Force officials telling us a supersonic trainer jet crashed not far from Columbus Air Force Base. No word yet on the status of these pilots. We're working for more information, and we will get that to you when we get it right here.
Plus, terrifying moments on the tarmac. A plane crashing on landing. What stopped this from being even worse?
Wow. Also, President Trump telling supporters last night that he has kept his pro-life promise and that voters should vote for life this November. We'll take that up coming up next, right here.
When I ran for office, I pledged to stand for life. And as president, that's exactly what I've done, and I have kept my promise, and I think everybody here understands that fully.